Chapter 7 of Triplanetary. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain and is read by Mark Smith of Simpsonville, South Carolina. Triplanetary by E. E. Smith. Chapter 7. The Hill. The heavy cruiser Chicago hung motionless in space, thousands of miles distant from the warring fleets of spaceships so viciously attacking and so stubbornly defending the planetoid of the enemy. In the captain's sanctum, Lyman Cleveland crouched tensely above his ultra-cameras, his sensitive fingers touching lightly their micrometric dials. His body was rigid, his face was set and drawn. Only his eyes moved, flashing back and forth between the observation plates and smoothly running rolls which were feeding into the cameras the hardened steel tapes upon which were being magnetically recorded the frightful scenes of carnage and destruction there revealed. Silent and bitterly absorbed, though surrounded by staring officers, whose fervent, almost unconscious cursing was prayerful in its intensity, the Visiray expert kept his ultra-instruments upon that awful struggle to its dire conclusion. Flawlessly those instruments noted every detail of the destruction of Roger's fleet, of the transformation of the armada of Triplanetary into an unknown fluid, and finally of the dissolution of the gigantic planetoid itself. Then furiously Cleveland drove his beams against the crimsonly opaque obscurity into which the peculiar, viscous stream of substance was disappearing. Time after time he applied his every watt of power, with no result. A vast volume of space, roughly ellipsoidal in shape, was closed to him by forces entirely beyond his experience or comprehension. But suddenly, while his rays were still trying to pierce that impenetrable murk, it disappeared instantly and without warning. The illimitable infinity of space once more lay revealed upon his plates, and his beams flashed on and on through the void unimpeded. "Back to tell us, sir?" The Chicago's captain broke the strained silence. "I wouldn't say so if I had the say." Cleveland, baffled and frustrated, straightened up and shut off his cameras. "We should report back as soon as possible, of course, but there seems to be a lot of wreckage out there yet that we can't photograph in detail at this distance. A close study of it might help us a lot in understanding what they did and how they did it. I'd say that we should get close-ups of whatever is left, and do it right away, before it gets scattered all over space, but of course I can't give you orders." "You can, though," the captain made surprising answer. "My orders are that you are in command of this vessel." "In that case, we will proceed at full emergency acceleration to investigate the wreckage," Cleveland replied, and the cruiser, sole survivor of Triplanetary's supposedly invincible force, shot away with every projector delivering its maximum blast. As the scene of the disaster was approached, there was revealed upon the plates a confused mass of debris, a mass whose individual units were apparently moving at random, yet which was as a whole still following the orbit of Roger's planetoid. Space was full of machine parts, structural members, furniture, flotsam of all kinds, and everywhere were the bodies of men. Some were encased in spacesuits, and it was to these that the rescuers turned first. Space-hardened veterans though the men of the Chicago were, they did not care even to look at the others. Strangely enough, however, not one of the floating figures spoke or moved, and spaceline men were hurriedly sent out to investigate. "All dead," quickly the dread report came back. "Been dead a long time. The armor's all stripped off the suits, and the generators and the other apparatus are all shot. Something funny about it, too. None of them seem to have been touched, but the machinery of the suits seems to be about half of it missing." "I've got it all on the spool, sir." Cleveland, his close-up survey of the wreckage finished, turned to the captain. "What they've just reported checks up with what I've photographed everywhere. I've got an idea of what might have happened, but it's so dizzy that I'll have to have a lot of reinforcement before I'll believe it myself. But you might have them bring in a few of the armored bodies, a couple of those switchboards and panels floating around out there, and half a dozen miscellaneous pieces of junk, the nearest things they can get hold of, whatever they happen to be." Then back to Tellus at maximum? Right, back to Tellus, as fast as we can possibly go there. While the Chicago hurtled through space at full power, Cleveland and the ranking officers of the vessel grouped themselves about the salvaged wreckage. Familiar with space wrecks as were they all, none of them had ever seen anything like the material before them. For every part and instrument was weirdly and meaninglessly disintegrated. There were no breaks, no marks of violence, and yet nothing was intact. Bolt holes stared empty, cores, shielding cases and needles had disappeared. The vital parts of every instrument hung awry. Disorganization reigned rampant and supreme. "I never imagined such a mess," the captain said after a long and silent study of the objects. "If you have any theory to cover that, Cleveland, I would like to hear it." "I want you to notice something first," the Visiray expert replied. "But don't look for what's there. Look for what isn't there." "Well, the armor's gone. So are the shielding cases, shafts, spindles, the housings and stems." The captain's voice died away as his eyes raced over the collection. "Why, everything that was made of wood, bakelite, copper, aluminum, silver, bronze, or anything but steel hasn't been touched, and every bit of steel is gone. But that doesn't make sense. What does it mean?" "I don't know yet," Cleveland replied slowly. "But I'm afraid that there's more and worse." He opened a spacesuit reverently, revealing the face. A face calm and peaceful, but utterly, sickeningly white. Still reverently, he made a deep incision in the brawny neck, severing the jugular vein, then went on soberly. "You never imagined such a thing as white blood, either, but it all checks up. Some way, somehow, every particle, probably every atom, of free or combined iron in this whole volume of space was made off with." "Huh? How come? And above all, why?" from the amazed and staring officers. "You know as much as I do," grimly, ponderingly. "If it were not for the fact that there are solid asteroids of iron out beyond Mars, I would say that somebody wanted iron badly enough to wipe out the fleets and the planetoid to get it. But anyway, whoever they were, they carried enough power so that our armament didn't bother them at all. They simply took the metal they wanted and went away with it, so fast that I couldn't trace them with an ultra beam. There's only one thing plain, and that's so plain that it scares me stiff. This whole affair spells intelligence with a capital I, and that intelligence is anything but friendly. As for me, I want to get Fred Roudebush at work on this soon. Think I'll hurry it up a little." He stepped over to his ultra-projector and called the terrestrial headquarters of the TSS. Samms' face soon appeared upon his screen. "We got it all, Virgil," he reported. "It's something extraordinary, bigger, wider, and deeper than any of us dreamed. It may be urgent, too, so I think I had better shoot the pictures in on the ultrawave and save a few days. Fred has a telemagneto recorder there that he can synchronize with this camera outfit easily enough, right?" "Right. Good work, Lyman. Thanks," came back terse approval and appreciation, and soon the steel tapes were again flashing between the feed rolls. This time, however, their varying magnetic charges were modulating an ultrawave so that every detail of that calamitous battle of the void was being screened and recorded in the innermost private laboratory of the Triplanetary Secret Service. Eager though he naturally was to join his fellow scientists, Cleveland did not waste his time during the long but uneventful journey back to Earth. There was much to study, many improvements to be made in his comparatively crude first ultra camera. Then, too, there were long conferences with Samms, and particularly with Roudebush, the mathematical physicist, whose was the task of solving the riddles of the energies and weapons of the Nevians. Thus it did not seem long before Green Terra grew large beneath the flying sphere of the Chicago. "Going to have to circle at once, aren't you?" Cleveland asked the chief pilot. He had been watching that officer closely for minutes, admiring the delicacy and precision with which the great vessel was being maneuvered preliminary to entering the Earth's atmosphere. "Yes," the pilot replied. We had to come in with a